In this section, we'll discuss how to secure your platform with a variety of user authentication methods available in Liferay DXP 7.4. In Liferay DXP, the sign-in widget is the default tool for authenticating users. The sign-in widget uses the instance database to authenticate users. Users can log in using one of the following authentication types: screen name, email address, and user ID. Screen name is a username established at account creation. It can be changed by the user as needed. Email address, which is the default authentication type used by the sign-in widget, is also established at account creation and can be changed later. User ID is an automatically generated ID number associated with the account at creation and cannot be changed. Only one of these authentication types can be used at a time to authenticate users when they sign in. By default, guests can create an account at the sign-in page. Certain pages and functions may be hidden unless an account is created. When a guest creates an account, they will need to fill out their information, including providing an email address and screen name, agree to any terms and conditions, and provide a security question or reminder query to be used when recovering passwords. These can be managed in the control panel. If guests should not be able to create accounts, you can disable this feature in the control panel. The Mondego Group, our use case, wants guests to create accounts since many of its features require an account. Mondego can also change the authentication type from email address to screen name. Liferay takes a secure by default approach, so the default security settings for user authentication are enabled with that in mind. General users authentication settings include enabling or disabling automatic login, password reset, new account creation, and email verification. Note that in our exercises for this and other modules, we disable require email verification, since we will not have a mail server set up. In an active instance, requiring email verification adds some extra security. In addition to these general settings, there are two additional tabs in user authentication settings for managing reminder queries and reserved credentials. Reminder queries, which are enabled by default, allow you to set password reminders and custom questions. This adds another layer of security if users need to recover their passwords. The Reserved Credentials tab allows you to reserve certain screen names or email addresses so that users are unable to use those when creating their accounts. In addition to maintaining the default settings of allowing strangers to create accounts but requiring them to verify their email addresses, Mondego requires reminder queries for all new accounts. This adds a layer of security, especially should users need to recover their account passwords. Mondego can also reserve specific screen names for administrative use only. CAPTCHA and reCAPTCHA can be configured to prevent bots from creating and accessing accounts. By default, Create Account CAPTCHA and Send Password CAPTCHA are enabled in Liferay DXP, both using simple CAPTCHA, which uses a text verification. This means that users have to complete a CAPTCHA when they create a new account, and if they need to request a new password. You can also enable simple CAPTCHA for message boards and forms. You can also use Google's reCAPTCHA, which provides more accessible CAPTCHA options, such as Audible CAPTCHA, but also requires an external service to be configured separately. CAPTCHA settings are managed in the control panel under System Settings. By default, any new users must complete a CAPTCHA when they create a Mondego account. Mondego can manage what kind of CAPTCHA is offered, including switching to use a reCAPTCHA, which includes more accessible options for users. Password policies add additional security to an instance of Liferay DXP by configuring certain password properties, including password changes, password syntax checking, password history, password expiration, and lockout. Password changes allows or prevents a user from changing a password and sets a time limit for a password reset link. Password syntax checking requires passwords to meet a certain syntax, checking for length and words. You can specify whether dictionary words are permitted, set a minimum number of characters, upper and lower case letters, symbols, numbers, and overall length. Password history lets you set how many passwords to keep in history to prevent old passwords from being reused. Password expiration determines whether passwords expire. If enabled, you can set the length of time passwords are valid, when and whether a warning is sent, and whether there is a grace limit before a password change is forced. Lockout allows you to set the maximum number of fail attempts before an account is locked, how long lockouts last, and how long the record of failed attempts is stored. Liferay DXP ships with a default password policy that can be modified as needed. All new users are automatically assigned the default policy. Additional password policies can be created as needed, and users are then assigned as members of the new policy in order for it to apply to them. Users can be assigned individually or as an organization. New password policies can also be added to the portal-ext.properties file. Since the Mondego Group handles sensitive information, the company highly recommends strong passwords for all its users, both internal and external. Users are also expected to regularly change their passwords for added security. To ensure that users follow these recommendations, Mondego creates a new password policy that requires a password change every 6 months, disallows the use of passwords that have been used in the past 2 years, and requires that the password consist of at least 10 characters, including 1 symbol, 1 uppercase letter, 1 lowercase letter, and 1 number. Additional authentication methods can be configured in Liferay DXP depending on the specific instance needs. The methods available for configuring authentication of users and applications include LDAP, which integrates with an existing LDAP server and authenticates users against those in the directory. SAML, which provides SSO and SLO by using identity providers and service providers. Kerberos, which authenticates Microsoft Windows accounts with Liferay DXP. OpenID Connect, an authentication layer built on OAuth 2.0, which enables users authentication using accounts from other systems. OpenAM, version 13 only, which is an SSO solution that integrates Liferay DXP into an infrastructure containing several authentication schemes. Token-based solutions, which standardize support for Shibboleth, SiteMinder, Oracle OAM, and any SSO that propagates a token via HTTP request parameter, HTTP request header, HTTP cookie, session attribute. Tokens contain the user's screen name, email address, or user ID. OAuth 2.0, which is an industry-standard authorization protocol that shares select credentials with various clients, authorizing passwordless access to portions of user-owned resources. And multi-factor authentication, which requires users to prove identity in multiple ways, such as a username and password and a one-time password. To better manage the security of the instance, Mondego can configure one of these methods for user authentication. For instance, they already have an LDAP server storing existing users. They can integrate with the server and authenticate users against the directory. Alternatively, Mondego might consider using multi-factor authentication, which we'll look at more closely now. Configuring multi-factor authentication provides more robust security by requiring users to prove their identity in multiple ways, including one-time password, configurable IP address, time-based OTP, and FIDO2 compliant devices. To use MFA, one-factor forms of authentication, such as Basic Auth, Digest Auth, or WebDAV, should be disabled. One-time password is the default factor and requires a working mail configuration to send the OTP to users via email. Enabling MFA without a working mail server will lock everyone out of the system. In Liferay DXP 7.4, 2 additional factors are shipped, though disabled by default: the IP address checker and the time-based OTP. The IP address MFA checker checks users' IP addresses with allowed IP address masks to verify identity. The time-based OTP MFA checker is based on the Google App Authenticator. This adds a profile option where users can generate a code that provides an additional time-restricted factor. The last MFA method that can be configured in Liferay DXP is FIDO2, or Fast Identity on Line 2. This allows users to authenticate without a password by using biometrics, such as fingerprint readers, mobile devices, or other security keys. Once FIDO2 is enabled for the platform, users can register and use their FIDO2 compliant devices to sign in. If multiple factors are enabled, the MFA checkers must be given a numeric order to determine which executes first, with the highest number running first. For extra security, Mondego enables multi-factor authentication, using an OTP in addition to the standard username/password login. Users log in by entering their credentials and then retrieving the OTP from their email. Let's review how the Mondego group can authenticate users. As a financial services company, Mondego prioritizes security of its users' accounts. Mondego users can be confident that their accounts are properly protected, but also be able to retrieve their accounts if necessary. To accomplish this, Mondego has a variety of options, such as requesting email verification, CAPTCHA, and reminder queries from users upon account creation, enabling multi-factor authentication, and requiring users to authenticate with an OTP or other MFA checker when they log in. Now we've reached our knowledge check for this section. For basic but secure user authentication, Mondego can use the blank with blank enabled to allow security password recovery. To prevent bots from creating scam accounts, Mondego requires users to complete a blank when they create an account. Mondego can also use a variety of methods to authenticate users, including blank, blank, blank.